Have you ever felt the ground shift beneath your feet, not from an earthquake but from the quiet collapse of trust? Not with strangers, not with enemies, but with your own family. This is a story about beginnings, but not the kind we expect. It's not the birth of a child or the start of a marriage. It's the beginning of a woman reclaiming her voice, her power, and her peace. And it started on her birthday. My name is Margaret Hill, and on the day I turned 61, I didn't ask for much. No grand gestures. No big speeches, just a quiet dinner with the people I loved, my son James, his wife Lena, and a few close friends who had stood beside me through seasons of both grief and joy. I had survived so much by then, losing my husband after 32 years of marriage, figuring out how to breathe in a house that echoed with silence, learning slowly to smile again, not the kind of smile you wear for others, but the kind that comes from healing. So when James suggested we celebrate with dinner, I said yes. I thought perhaps it would be simple, honest, gentle. The restaurant was one of those trendy places Lena loved. Exposed brick, string lights, menus printed on recycled paper. Waiters in denim aprons calling everyone friend or boss. We sat at a long table near the back, beneath a flickering light bulb that swayed just enough to feel like it was breathing with us. Before I could even settle in, Lena handed me a small gift bag. She looked almost too cheerful, eyes wide, smile manicured like she was performing joy. Inside the bag was a baby onesie, white cotton, tiny. Printed with words in soft pink, best grandma ever. I blinked. We thought it was time to share the good news, Lena said, placing a hand gently on her belly. I turned to James. He nodded, his face calm, too calm. And we figured now is the perfect time to start planning the nursery, she added, sipping her water with one hand and tapping on her phone with the other. My stomach shifted. I smiled. I congratulated them. Because that's what you do when your only child tells you you're going to be a grandmother, right? Except the moment didn't feel right. It felt scripted, as though the punchline was still coming, and it came. James stood and tapped his spoon on his wine glass like a man about to propose, not announce. Can I have everyone's attention? He said, voice bright, too rehearsed. He raised his glass. Tonight's not just about celebrating my incredible mom. It's about a new chapter for our growing family. Lena and I are moving into her apartment. There it was, a truth I had never agreed to. I sat still, my fork suspended midair, my heart pounding behind my ribs. James beamed. It just makes sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore, and we're starting a family. It's such a gift. So generous of her. I felt the blood drain from my face. Everyone around the table clinked their glasses. Toasts were raised, smiles exchanged. But I didn't move. Because in that moment I wasn't a mother, I was a possession. An obstacle dressed up as an opportunity. Have you ever watched your life get handed away like a wrapped present without your name ever being called? I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I panicked. My brain froze, my voice failed. I smiled because I didn't know what else to do. They called it gratitude. I called it a trap. That night I listened to Lena describe how she'd redecorate the apartment. Paint swatches, crib placement. Removing the old lady curtains. James chimed in helpfully, you can still visit, Mom. Keep your plants on the balcony. We'll give you plenty of time to move. It was said so casually, so confidently. As if the decision had been made long ago and I had simply missed the memo. They hadn't asked. They hadn't consulted. They had declared. I excused myself halfway through dessert. James gave me a look as if I were being dramatic. Lena offered to call a rideshare. I declined. I walked 3 blocks in heels that hadn't touched pavement in years. Each step blistered my toes and bruised my spirit, but it helped me remember I was still here, still breathing, still real. By the time I reached my apartment, everything felt different. The walls felt closer, the memories heavier, the silence louder. I double-locked the door, checked it, then checked it again. Their voices echoed in my mind. Lena's laugh at my curtains. James' soft assertion, she doesn't need the space. But I did, because it wasn't just space. It was mine. We don't just live in homes, we live in memories. In the creaks of the floorboards, in the warmth of the sunbeam that hits the kitchen counter just right. In the scent of old books and the feel of a doorknob that fits your hand like a handshake from the past. And that night, I knew. They weren't taking my apartment, they were taking my history. I sat at my kitchen table for nearly an hour, unmoving, hands pressed flat against the wood like I was grounding myself. When I finally stood, it was to pull out an old drawer filled with my late husband's documents. Folders we hadn't touched since his passing. That's when I found it. A power of attorney form, signed during a hospital stay when I had pneumonia. James' name was on it. My stomach turned. I texted my lawyer at midnight. Is this still valid? The reply came in the morning. If you didn't revoke it, yes, we need to talk. And that's when it hit me. James hadn't been hopeful, he had been prepared. When someone smiles while erasing your name from your own life. That's not love, that's strategy. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw James clinking that wine glass. I heard Lena's voice calling my home their nursery. I replayed their smiles, not warm but expectant, rehearsed, as if they were checking off steps on a script. When morning came, I sat on the edge of the bed, my robe wrapped tight around me. I didn't move for minutes, just breathing, just remembering. The lawyer called at 8:07 a.m. You need to come in today, she said, her voice clipped. So I dressed like I was going to war, pressed slacks, collared shirt. Shoes that echoed on the hardwood. I gathered every file I could find. Old deeds, insurance forms, that power of attorney document from the hospital stay 2 years ago. The one James brought while I was hooked up to an IV and barely conscious. Just a few insurance papers, he'd said, and I had signed, because I trusted him. She flipped through the papers, her lips pressed into a thin line. You never revoked this, she said. If he had a doctor say you were exhibiting confusion even just once, he could use this to challenge your mental fitness. It's rare, but it happens, especially with property at stake. My stomach dropped. My voice barely came out, but I'm not confused. You're not, she said, but we need to revoke this now, and moving forward everything goes through me, every text, every email, every form. No exceptions. When I got home that afternoon, the gate lock jammed. I twisted and pushed until I realized it was just stiff from the cold. But for one terrifying second, I wondered if they had already changed the locks. If they were moving faster than I thought. That evening, I didn't cook. I didn't clean. I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Every dollar I had ever spent for James. His college tuition after he lost his scholarship. Half the wedding. The emergency loan for the IVF cycle that never happened. The rent I covered their first year married. The groceries, the utilities, the weekends away I gifted when they needed to reset. I looked at that list and realized this wasn't just entitlement. This was a pattern. They knew how to say the word baby like a password, and I had always opened the door. That night I opened the closet and pulled down old photo albums. I stared at photos of James in his baseball uniform, of Lena at the engagement party. I flipped through the pages until my hands trembled. Then I picked up my phone and texted James just 5 words. We need to talk. Privately, 4 hours passed before he responded. A thumbs up emoji. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't his mother anymore. I was his obstacle. 3 days later, I was in the shower when a manila envelope slid under my front door. No knock, no bell, just the soft scrape of betrayal across my tile floor. Inside was a document. Preliminary transfer agreement, residential property. My name already printed, their names neatly signed. The only thing missing was my signature. Attached was a note. No rush, just need this signed by Friday for the bank. Bank approvals, they weren't just planning. They were already using my home as collateral. I called my lawyer and sent her a photo. If you sign that, she said, her tone steady, it's over, don't even leave it unattended, shred it. I stared at the paper and felt the blood drain from my hands. They had printed a path forward as if I'd already walked it. That night, I pulled out every legal document I had ever signed. Buried in a health directive packet from my pneumonia stay was another form, financial proxy authority. Limited control for incapacity. He had slipped it in and I had signed it. I remembered it now, him standing by my bedside asking me to trust him. They didn't need me to agree, they just needed me quiet. The next morning, I froze my credit, secured my accounts, revoked every single power James had over me. I changed my emergency contact to my friend Iris. I stopped replying to their texts, but I saved everyone. Every smiling emoji, every thanks again, Mom. Because they weren't building a family, they were building a case. 2 days later, I called the building manager. Has anyone accessed the gate with my spare key? I asked. There was a pause. James used it the other night, he said he was checking on you. I hadn't asked him to, I hadn't given him permission, I asked if the locks could be changed. Yes, he said with a formal request. So I filed it. I moved my documents into a metal lock box and slid it beneath my bed. I stopped drinking wine with dinner. I stopped taking sleep aids. I needed to stay sharp. I began journaling everything, every text, every visit. Every strange comment Lena made. I even made a grocery list and dated it just to prove my memory was clear because I wasn't paranoid. I was being hunted. They weren't waiting for me to agree. They were waiting for me to slip. The doorbell rang 2 days later. It was Lena. She smiled like nothing had happened, held up a coffee with my name misspelled in marker. I brought your favorite, she chirped. Hazelnut cream. Extra ice. She tried to hand it to me. I didn't move. You didn't text first, I said. She laughed like I was being quaint. I figured I'd surprise you. You've been quiet. I stood there letting the silence do the work. She pushed the gift bag forward. Vitamins, she said. Prenatals, we're hoping. I blinked. You're pregnant. She placed her hand on her belly, dramatically, like a bad actress on a soap opera. We weren't going to say anything yet, but after the dinner, it meant so much. We feel like it's a sign. But I watched her later drink sparkling water without checking the label, walk through my apartment like she already owned it, open my drawers, comment on what furniture to keep and what to donate. When she went to the bathroom, I peeked into her purse. Inside was a manila folder, my floor plan labeled with furniture changes, a printed Zillow estimate of my home's value. She wasn't nesting. She was staging. They weren't moving in. They were flipping it. When she returned, I smiled. Want to stay for dinner? She looked surprised. Really, should I call James? No, I said, just us. I served her frozen pasta, poured her stale wine. Let her talk about cribs and paint colors. And when she left, still smiling, still playing the role, I locked the door behind her and slid my sewing machine in front of it. Then I opened my phone and created a new folder. I named it Proof. The morning after Lena's visit, I didn't drink my coffee. I couldn't trust it. I made a fresh pot and sat in the kitchen, listening to the wind hit the windows. That house, my house, had begun to feel like an animal about to defend itself. Everything inside me was taut, bracing. I called Iris at 6 in the morning. Iris had been a real estate agent for 30 years before she retired to a quiet town 3 hours away to grow roses and ignore her ex-husband's texts. When she picked up, she didn't even ask why I was calling that early. Talk to me, she said, just like that. I told her everything: the birthday dinner, the fake pregnancy, the real estate folders in Lena's purse, the power of attorney. The false narrative they were posting online, casting me as the villain in their picture-perfect story of starting a family. Iris didn't interrupt, she just listened. When I finished, she said one thing. You need to get out before they realize you've caught on. She offered to help me list the apartment through her old network. No public listing, no photos online. Private buyers only, people who paid in cash quietly. You won't get the highest price, she said, but you'll get your freedom, and they won't know until it's done. I didn't hesitate. We set everything in motion that afternoon. While James and Lena thought I was home watching baking shows and sipping tea, I was booking inspections, reviewing offers, and choosing what pieces of my life were worth taking with me. I texted James once, just a short message about how I was reflecting and needed space. I liked one of Lena's posts about nursery inspiration. I even posted a photo of meatloaf and mashed potatoes with the caption, "Nothing beats home cooking." I wanted them to think I was folding, softening, staying still. I wasn't. I found a small cabin 2 states away near a lake with water so still it looked like a mirror. The kitchen was outdated. The patio was cracked, but it had something I hadn't felt in a long time: privacy. The seller was a widower in his 70s who wanted to downsize. When I told him I could pay cash and close fast, he didn't ask why. He shook my hand and said, "Good, let's do it." While James thought I was reorganizing my spice rack, I was wiring money and hiring movers. I didn't tell anyone what I was taking. I boxed up my husband's old tools, the wedding china, the family albums. I left the couch, the TV, the kitchen table. I packed what mattered. I hired a man from church, Frank, who owned a truck and didn't ask questions. He picked up the boxes on a Thursday afternoon and drove them to a storage unit near the new town. I changed my mailing address, set up a P.O. box, forwarded my mail with a start date delayed by 2 weeks so nothing would look unusual. I told the apartment management I'd be traveling indefinitely and left Iris as my emergency contact. I even called the electric company and requested a shut-off date under the pretense of moving in with family during recovery. The woman on the phone told me she hoped I felt better soon. I said thank you. Every day I wore a neutral expression. I let James believe I was drifting. I let Lena believe I was bending. Behind the scenes, I unraveled every thread of their plan. 4 days into this quiet rebellion, Lena posted a video sitting on my couch, saying how she wanted to bring warmth back into the space. The caption read, "Soon to be ours, but always Grandma's legacy." It had thousands of views. I didn't cry. I screenshotted the video and filed it under my folder, proof. That night, I left one small hint. I set an empty suitcase in the hallway somewhere Lena would see it the next time she popped in uninvited. I wanted her to think I was packing for a short trip. I wanted her to feel secure. They didn't have time, not really, but they thought they did. And that was all I needed. I closed on the sale 3 days later. Cash, no contingencies. Iris handled the whole thing like a ghost, no trace, no public record until it was irreversible. When I hung up the phone, confirming the deed was done, the knock came. Sharp, insistent. I didn't answer. "Mom," James said through the door. "Open up, we need to talk." I stayed quiet. I knew he had a spare key, but I'd changed the locks 2 days ago. He tried the key. It didn't work. I heard him try again, harder this time, then silence, then a softer knock. "Mom, Ashley's freaking out. We just need to know what's going on." I didn't reply. He lowered his voice. "We found out about the realtor. You're selling the place. Are you serious?" Silence. "You're sabotaging your own family." Silence. "If you don't open this door and talk like an adult, I swear to God, I'll do what I have to do legally." I stayed still, unmoving, breath even. Eventually he left, but not without leaving something behind, another envelope. Pushed through the door. Inside was a formal notice, a request for transitional occupancy review. Highlighted in yellow was the phrase, "pending potential medical guardianship claim." I placed it on the table and called my lawyer. She answered on the first ring. "They're escalating," she said. "They're trying to declare you unfit." That night I sat at the kitchen table and opened my lockbox. I copied every document, every receipt, every email. I recorded myself reading a timeline of every financial decision I'd made over the past 6 months. Calm, clear, dated, stamped. I uploaded the files to a secure folder with my lawyer's access, because I wasn't just defending my home. I was defending my mind. 3 days later, Lena returned. This time she didn't knock. She stood in the hall and yelled loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "You're being cruel," she shouted. "We're trying to start a family, and you're shutting us out." She pulled out her phone. She was filming. I opened the door just enough for the camera to catch my face, and I said one word: "Leave." That video went online that night. The title was, "Pregnancy Without a Home Betrayed by Family." It gained thousands of likes, comments flooded in. "How could a mother do this? Disgusting behavior from a bitter old woman. She doesn't deserve grandchildren." I saved every post, every comment, proof. The next morning, James sent me a final text. "If you want to avoid court, sign the attached and we'll forget all of this." It was a deed transfer already signed by him and Lena. My name was left blank. I didn't even open the file. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Then I texted back, "You'll be served within the week. Do not contact me again." And then I turned off my phone. That night I zipped my suitcase, left a note for the new owners. "Everything here is yours now, except the silence that I'm taking with me." At 4:35 a.m., I wheeled my suitcase down the sidewalk. The same sidewalk James used to ride his tricycle on, the one I had salted in winter. Swept in spring, I didn't look back. Iris met me 2 towns over, holding coffee and a knowing smile. I had left the house. But more importantly, I had left the story they wrote for me, and I was finally ready to write my own. The cabin sat near a lake that didn't make noise. The kind of stillness you feel before sunrise where the world hasn't quite decided to wake up yet. The air tasted clean. The silence didn't ache, it comforted. I didn't unpack the first night. I just stood in the middle of the kitchen, surrounded by boxes and echoes, and let myself exhale. A full exhale, the kind you don't even realize you've been holding for months. I didn't check my phone for 3 days. When I finally turned it on, it lit up like a storm. 37 missed calls, 19 voicemails, over 60 texts, James, Lena, unknown numbers, family, friends. But it was the group messages that cut deepest. Screenshots, video links, forwarded rants. Ashley had posted the clip of me telling her to leave. James had written a long message to our extended family about how I'd abandoned them in their time of need, about how I'd sold their future home without warning, about how I'd run away like a coward. And the lie still lived. The baby lie, people believed it. My sister, cousins I hadn't seen in years, neighbors I'd baked cookies for. Messages flooded in, I hope you come to your senses. Family sticks together. The weight of it all sat heavy in my chest, not because I doubted myself, but because I had once loved these people, had trusted them, had shared birthdays and funerals and holidays, and now they saw me as a villain in a story written without my consent. But then something changed. One message stood out from Melissa, my niece. She had never liked Lena. Always kept a careful distance, never said much. Her message was simple. Aunt Margaret, I don't buy any of this. Are you okay? I replied, yes, safe and done. She sent back a red heart and wrote, call me if you ever need backup. I didn't cry, not fully, but I felt something stir, the quiet kind of loyalty that doesn't ask for attention, it just shows up. The next day my lawyer called. The sale is complete, she said. Funds are transferred, the deed is filed. Legally, that apartment is no longer yours and never James's. I asked her about the guardianship threats. They won't risk filing now, she said. Not after this, we have too much proof. The timeline alone dismantles their entire narrative. She paused, but it's time to update your will, immediately. I already had. 2 weeks earlier, before I left, I had sat down and rewritten everything. Not just removed James and Lena, blocked them. Every asset I owned, my cabin, my savings, my life insurance policy, was now part of a community endowment created in my husband's name, dedicated to helping older women escape financial or emotional abuse from their own families. The final signature was done over black coffee on a cloudy Thursday morning. No drama, no gasps. Just a quiet moment with my lawyer sliding the papers across the desk. If they challenge this, she said, they'll lose. The paper trail is unbreakable. I nodded. I took the folder. I felt the weight of it like armor. 2 days later, Melissa called again. I think James knows, she said. He's posting passive-aggressive quote images on Facebook. Lena had changed her Instagram bio to chosen family only. I laughed loud, unfiltered. For the first time in weeks. Let them quote, I said. They lost the right to my name the moment they tried to steal it. A week later, I received a letter from the board of the charity I had funded. The account had gone live, under the name. The Quiet Exit Fund. It was real now, tucked into law, permanent. The first deposit had already been allocated. I reread the documents twice, then filed them beside my teacups. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of sparkling water and watched the breeze move through the pine trees. It didn't whisper guilt or anger, it sounded like closure. Later, my phone buzzed again. A message from James's old college roommate. Just saw what they did. You were right to cut them off. Wish my mom had done the same before my sister drained her dry. I replied, thank you. Because the truth was, I hadn't just protected myself. I had put a name to something millions of people live through but never speak about. Family as a weapon, love used as leverage, and silence as survival. But I wasn't quiet anymore, and I wasn't scared. 6 months passed. The air at the lake grew cooler. The pine trees turned darker in the late afternoon light. I had learned how to tell time not by a clock but by the warmth of the porch under my feet and the way the shadows moved across the water. I hadn't heard from James or Lena in over 2 months. Not since the final legal notice went through, barring them from contacting me regarding any inheritance or estate matter. They didn't contest the will. They didn't try again. I think they finally understood. I was gone, not just physically, gone in the way that mattered most, the version of me who made excuses, who apologized just to keep peace, who loved people who saw her as a stepping stone. She had disappeared somewhere between the clinking of a wine glass and the scraping sound of a manila envelope on tile. My days looked different now. I spent my mornings in the garden, planting thyme and mint and basil in soil that felt clean. I took long walks by the lake, nodding to neighbors I was just beginning to know by name. There was Claire, the woman next door, who moved to the area after divorcing her husband of 40 years. She had a tiny soap business and a loud laugh that reminded me of wind chimes in a storm. We started playing chess in the evenings, her correcting my rookie mistakes with a patient smirk. You have a killer instinct, she said once, watching me trap her queen. I think I'm just learning not to flinch, I replied. The cabin became more than a home. It became a mirror of who I was becoming, quiet, simple, strong. I cooked again. Real food, not microwave dinners or grief snacks. I made soups and baked bread. I slept without clutching my phone. I laughed without permission. The day before my next birthday, I received a letter from Melissa. Inside was a photo of her newborn daughter, cheeks round and pink. On the back of the photo was a note. If she grows up to be half as strong as you, I'll have done something right. I pinned it to the fridge with a magnet shaped like a sunflower and let the tears fall. Not the kind that sting, but the kind that rinse. That evening, I wrote a check to a local shelter for women over 50, those escaping financial control, coercion, and manipulation within their families. I signed the check, sealed the envelope, and wrote 3 words on the back. Use it well. And then the final note came, delivered by mail, no return address. A small white box wrapped in tissue and ribbon like a peace offering. Inside was a framed sonogram and a card, "Can we start over?" And I stared at the image. At first glance it looked real, but I had seen it before. Months ago, on a pregnancy app Lena used to visualize her journey. It was a stock photo, a placeholder. They had printed it, framed it, mailed it like an apology. 2 days later came the email. Subject line, dinner, message, "We'll be in your area this weekend. Let's just talk, no pressure, just family." I didn't respond. That Saturday at 6:40 p.m., a silver SUV pulled up at the edge of my gravel driveway. They got out. Lena wore heels too tall for the terrain. James wore the same blazer he used for arguments he wanted to win. He carried a bottle of wine. They knocked, first softly, then harder. "Mom, please just talk to us." I stood inside, lights off, hands on the back of a chair. "You're shutting out your grandchild," Lena shouted. "Is that what you want?" They stood outside for 22 minutes. I timed it. When they left, they set the wine bottle down on the step. The label read, "Forgiveness Pinot Noir." I poured it down the drain. Later that night, James sent one last message. "You win. Hope it was worth losing your family." I didn't reply. I screenshotted it, filed it under proof, then deleted his contact. The next morning, I had coffee with Claire. I told her about the fake sonogram, about the driveway visit, about the bottle. She didn't gasp or scold. She just stirred her coffee and said, "People get bold when money's involved, but you didn't give them what they wanted. That makes you dangerous now." And it was true. Dangerous wasn't a word I had ever used for myself, but it fit. That week, I bought a raised garden bed and joined the local co-op. I submitted an application to volunteer at the community center. I started leaving my phone in drawers, turning it off at night. I wasn't hiding. I was healing. I didn't need applause. I didn't need revenge. I just needed peace. And peace, it turned out, was something I could grow. On the anniversary of my move, I stood barefoot on the back porch, a mug of mint tea in my hands, watching the birds stitch across the sky like thread on fabric. I hadn't spoken to James or Lena in over 8 months, not since the lawyer confirmed their legal block was finalized. No more inheritance, no more contact, no loopholes. The Quiet Exit Fund had launched its second wave of support grants, helping 5 women relocate, including one who had fled her daughter's financial control after 20 years. That morning, I received a voicemail from one of the recipients. Her voice cracked as she said, "I thought I was the only one. Thank you for showing me I wasn't." I saved that message, not out of pride, but out of purpose. Because this wasn't just about reclaiming my home. It was about reclaiming a life that no longer revolved around being useful to people who mistook love for leverage. It was about rewriting the ending, not for them, for me. And this time, no one else